Johnson took a 5-win team to an 11-win team. He transformed the offense and built a culture, but still, the Chicago Bears are not being ranked where they need to be, and part of that reason is defense. We're going to talk a little bit about that, plus Matt Forte weighs in on what the Chicago Bears need to do in the draft and the expectation that he has for them next season. I think it's going to be one that a lot of Bears fans agree with. We're going to talk about all that plus more right after this. What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And yeah, man, we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. We're still leading into the NFL draft. We could be dropping our mock draft volume 3. But I want to talk about Colin Cowherd and his comments with the Chicago Bears because I think, you guys know, I don't care anything about the national media. Colin Cowherd included. I do like how people are starting to change their tunes about the Chicago Bears a little bit. That's just the petty side of me, as you guys know, that really is when it comes down to. But when you look at Ben Johnson not being ranked in the top 10, being ranked outside the top 10 of coaches, sounds like a little bit of bullshit to me personally. When you look at the Bears, they went from 5-12 to 11-6 last year, which is really good, right? And most people are looking at Ben Johnson and the work that he did with this team is great. But NBC Sports released its head coach power rankings, and Ben Johnson came in at number 13th. And when you look at Colin Cowherd, he said this in regards to that. If you're telling me Ben Johnson and Liam Cohen are 13th and 14th best coaches, I've watched what they did in year one. This is the greatest group of coaches in league history because Ben Johnson is outstanding. It's like when McVay went to the Rams. First year, they go from unwatchable to like double-digit wins. You're like, is McVay a top 4 or 5 coach? I think Ben Johnson and Liam Cohen today are top 10 coaches, and I think they are unbelievable. Now, here's the thing, right? And we all know what the national media, when it comes down to it, is always going to have a bias with the Chicago Bears. It's the reality of it. I don't tend to like to talk about it because when you start saying that the national media has a bias against your team, people look at it and say, well, why would they have a bias against the Chicago Bears? And I want to, on the flip side of that, I want to say that the Bears have earned that doubt by the national media because of how they have run themselves as an organization over the last 30 plus years, right? Like they deserve some of that. I'm not going to sit here and act and be the homer that's like, oh my God, the Bears are hated and it's completely unwarranted. No, there's some warrantedness about it, absolutely, but fuck y'all. Like, I want to be clear still on this one. It's still fuck y'all. Because at the end of the day, I'm all for believing what you see, right? And when you look at the Chicago Bears staff, from top to bottom, this is a great staff from top to bottom. Now, when you look at the top, because I think when you have these top 10 rankings, and these rankings, if you're going to talk about where somebody should be, you need to talk about who they're going to replace. So let's talk about the rankings. They have Sean McVay, number 1. No problems there. Andy Reid, number 2 with the Chiefs. Again, no problems there. Kyle Shanahan, number 3 with the 49ers. Again, no problem there. Mike McDonald with the Seahawks, number 4. Okay, we can have that conversation. Sean Payton, number 5 with the Broncos. Okay, they were 12th last year, so he does have a 63 win percentage there. Okay, Jim Harbaugh with the Chargers. Okay, I can get with that. Mike Vrabel with the Patriots. They are in the Super Bowl. He deserves to be in the top 10. Dan Campbell with the Lions. Sustained success. I could see that. Nick Sirianni with the Eagles. Okay, we're starting to get there. Matt LaFleur with the Packers. Okay. 13, DeMarco Ryans with the Texans. Okay, Kevin O'Connell at number 12 with the Vikings. All right, and then Ben Johnson there at number 13 with the Chicago Bears. Liam Cohen with the Jaguars at number 14. So I think when you look at this, and if I'm gonna talk objectively about it, it seems like the ranking is weighing more towards sustained success. And in that case, I can only argue so much about it, right? Like if you're talking about teams that have had longer sustained success, it's been one season for the Chicago Bears, one season head coaches. Okay, we can get to having a conversation about that, right? But at the end of the day, I'll look at it this way. Much like Cowherd's logic here is that when you watch the game of football, if you take away any and everything, and it's a power ranking. Keep in mind, Power rankings should not be about necessarily the history of stuff. It's power. It's based off the current. I can make a case for what Ben Johnson did to be above those guys, but it's fine. You know what? We're going to take it with as it is, and the Bears need to take this. And if Ben Johnson is who I know that Ben Johnson is, he's going to definitely use this as bulletin board material, because it's just another shred of doubt for the Chicago Bears in an era where it seems like all that the Bears have is just constant doubt. Look towards the team. You look at the way that he used and what he did with rookies. The way the Kyle Manon guy, 7th round pick, came and performed for the Bears. Colston Loveland, Luther Burden in the 2nd round, which some of y'all get to talking about. Poles can't draft in the 2nd round. Luther Burden's right there, right? But you saw those guys, right? And so maybe there's a thought process of, well, are those guys going to be able to make the necessary step? And it's cool. Is it borderline criminal that Ben Johnson isn't in the top 10? Sure. Am I a Bears fan that inherently I'm always going to look at some of the doubt around the Bears and be like, y'all on that bullshit again? Yes, absolutely I am. But at the end of the day, it comes down to this. What we prove on the football field is what we prove on the football field. And maybe it was the comeback nature of the Chicago Bears, a lot of those wins in the second half of the season, how we had to come back in those fourth quarters, and the people who voted on that power ranking are looking at it and saying, well, is that going to be sustainable? They lost a lot of starters, all that type of stuff. Okay, cool. But this is like what Ben Johnson has done as far as a leader of men and what he's done as far as a person to guide the new direction of a franchise. You can keep doubting that all you want, but Ben Johnson has already shown and proven, at least in my opinion, he's like that. And so we're going to continue to see him work. We're going to continue to see him grind. We're going to continue to see him put in the effort that's needed to continue to turn this team around, because that is who Ben Johnson is as a coach. And that's what I love about Ben Johnson being here in Chicago. So that's just my thought process. You guys can let me know how you feel on it down below, as always. But with that said, let's get into the Chicago Bears. They scheduled another top 30 visit, right? This one comes from Tony Pauline, of course, of Essentially Sports, who analyzes the NFL. But the Chicago Bears have scheduled a new top 30 visit with Dom Orange, the defensive tackle out of Iowa State. Now, this is another guy that shows that the Bears are still looking at the defensive line. It's not a guy that projects to go in the first round, which I know there are still a lot of Bears fans that are still in denial about the Chicago Bears probably not going edge or defensive line in round one. But, we'll see what ends up happening with that. I'm just going to leave it at that, right? But when you look at this and what that could potentially mean for the Chicago Bears, listen, I don't care what rounds you get anybody, right? Like a lot of us, rightfully so, I want to say that, we bitched last year when the Bears didn't get a running back, and we didn't draft a running back till round one. A lot of you guys, if you're being honest with that, you'll tell yourself, hey, yeah, I did that, because a lot of Bears fans did that. There were a lot of Bears fans that after we struck out in the first 2 rounds and didn't get the running back that all of us wanted and stuff like that, a lot of us thought, what the hell are the Bears going to do here? What are the Bears really doing here? What is the aim here? Are they getting it right? Are they getting it wrong? But when you look at Dominique Orange and potentially the defensive tackle, and whether it goes in the first round or second round, whatever it is, it's just about the Chicago Bears getting it right. And that's what the Bears are doing right now. They are getting and gaining as much information as over so many defensive linemen so that they can take a look at, all right, based on how the board drops, we feel confident that we can still get talent because we had a top 30 visitor. We met with X guys. So Dominique Orange out of Iowa State, 6'4", 325 pounds. Over the course of his collegiate career, only 1 sack, which I know some Bears fans are going to raise some concerns at. 2 passes deflected over that time, 66 tackles, 32 of those being solo as well. No forced fumbles. I like that. This is a guy that kind of brings that size factor that we know that Ben Johnson does appreciate as well. But when you look at the athlete, despite him being over 320 pounds, 31 inches on the vertical jump, which is crazy, 27 reps on the bench. He ran the 40 once. He had a 5.40, which isn't like some of the elite. Like we've seen guys that are like 260, 280, run a 4.740, but he ran a 5.140. Not bad, right? So that's what it comes down to. He did pull up after 35 yards due to tightness with his hamstring, so take that what you will as well. His 10-yard split became between 1.68 and 1.7 seconds, which is amazing, and his short shuttle time of 4.65 is also extremely impressive. Dom Orange has the nickname of Big Cactus, right? He earned a third-team All-Big 12 selection after having just 18 tackles and 1 pass deflected, and he's projected to be a late day 2 pick in the 4th round or so of the draft. So that's where the Chicago Bears will be looking at him. He's a great run stopper, and he can be a really good asset on that defensive line. Doesn't necessarily bring the pass rush, right? So it seems like Ryan Poles is looking at some complementary skill sets to Javon Dexter with bringing in guys on that defensive tackle that more so run stopping parts of it, and we'll see in that one. But we'll see, right? I think you have Javon Dexter. We know that Javon Dexter's already a guy that the Bears are invested in. We'll see what he gets on an extension. You have Grady Jarrett here now as well, right? So you look at that part of it. He hasn't really performed quite as what the Bears had expected or wanted to see out of him. So you have all those things that are there, right? And I think now you have to look at, are the Bears just looking to replace that, and can they? And we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen with that. I look at this situation with the Bears and I say this. It's just about getting the right guy, right? And that doesn't always mean that the right guy is the guy that we all have pegged, that we've all had rumors about, that we've all heard been rumored to the Chicago Bears. That doesn't make the guy the right guy. And I think very often the thing that I call fan brain, that stems from people looking at the reports, and that's really all they do. And I don't knock that, right? Like, I don't mean that to be offensive, because a lot of people don't have time to go ins and outs of the draft combine or whatever else. They read their articles, they watch their podcasts, and that's how they inform themselves. And that's the job. As podcasters, as creatives, I feel like our job is to help educate fans on people who don't have enough time to do all this research, give it to them in a nice package so that way they can use that to kind of educate themselves. That's really the way that I go about it. That's the way that I construct my episodes. I do all those type of things, right? And I think when you look at Dom Orange in regards to that, he does have the potential to project as a future starter in the NFL. Now, the question is that we know that potential isn't always realized, and a player can look like they can develop into that, and it never quite materialized. I mean, we've seen that in guys here in Chicago recently under, Ryan Poles that he drafted. So, his fit as a run stopper is excellent, and he is still a developmental piece. So when you look at bringing in Kentavious Street, Neville Gallimore, right? Like, you're bringing in veterans as you bring this guy along. Now, I think if you're drafting in the 4th round, that's perfectly fine. The thing you don't want to do is in rounds 1, 2, and 3, draft a guy that ends up needing a year or two of development. If somebody needs a year or two of development at round 4, that's a little bit more flexibility in that, but you still got to have veterans in there that can produce for you now as you develop that, right? So I do think that when you're seeing Ben Johnson and, Ryan Poles and Dennis Allen look at a succession plan, right? They could look at guys that, hey, in 2 years, this guy could be this. And so it's willing to bet on that in this round, because if it ends up hitting, which is still an if it ends up hitting, that we have this level of talent that we got at this, and it's still going to be cost effective for us where we don't have to go out and get it. I think Grady Jarrett's underwhelming performance last year left a lot open for the Chicago Bears. We'll see if he has another disappointing season this year. Like I've said, I'm not trying to throw him any bail, but we've seen players that have rough first seasons with new teams that then are able to turn it around some. Could that be Grady Jarrett? Hopefully it can be, because it would help answer some more questions and get more value out of a contract that we just didn't get the value out of that we hoped to get last year. So, of course, I hope to see that part of it, and we'll just see. Other than that, we will just see what shakes out. And so it seems like the Bears are starting to plan for life without Grady Jarrett, and that's what they need to be doing, because based off the results of what you saw on the football field last year, you have to start preparing for something else other than Grady Jarrett. It's just the reality of it. Grady Jarrett didn't give you enough to where you can look at that, and I think just feel absolutely safe in that. That's my personal opinion, but you guys can let me know how you feel on that part down below. With that said, let's move into the next subject, right? And so we got to talk about Matt Forte. Matt Forte had a lot to say in regards to the Chicago Bears, mostly all positive, right? In regards to the draft, in regards to the defensive identity and the reset that's needed there. And so I think a good place to leap off from that is Matt Forte's comments on the draft, where he said that the Bears have to focus on improving the defense. You have to go defense, and we're going to talk about that mindset. So Matt Forte was asked about the Chicago Bears and the draft, and he said this: address the defense first and foremost. Defensively, I noticed in the playoffs, especially against the LA Rams, the offensive line of the Rams really kind of wore down the Bears and was establishing the run in a dominant way that allowed them to essentially win the game at the end. That was something that wasn't necessarily new. And he's right on that, right? Like, as much as we make a big deal about the pass rush and getting to the quarterback is such a disruptive part of football and something that you need consistently, it was also the Bears' inability to stop the run, especially big runs in key moments, especially on where you could actually have the drive stall at. So there's no doubt that the Bears, this is going to be a defensive-focused draft. I talked about it a lot on yesterday's episode, the importance of focusing on the defense in this draft. You took care of the offense last year. Now you need to find 2 or 3 starters on that defense, and definitely starting caliber players. Even if they don't necessarily start at the start of the season, you still need to find those guys in this draft. Now, the Bears very well could want to start Austin Booker here, and we'll see right on that edge role. But regardless, you need to find some starting caliber players in this one. And so Matt Forte isn't the only guy that wants to see the Chicago Bears focus on the draft. Safety is a huge need in this draft as well. Defensive tackle, defensive line. They even may have to go linebacker. Right now, I don't know if I expect the Bears to address cornerback as much with them basically returning everybody healthy. You got Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, Tyreek Stevenson, Terrell Smith. Like, you have those guys back. You have Zay Frazier, your rookie last year, who didn't play a lot. He's going to play, of course, today. So the question really becomes about for the Bears in this draft is, what do they address first, right? And I know that's the great debate right now in Bears fans, and I know there's a segment of Bears fans I trigger every single time I tell them, hey, don't be surprised if defensive line isn't taken in the first round. But I think when you look at guys like Peter Woods, Caden McDonald, right? Of course, those guys being top choices at defensive tackle. Then, of course, you have guys like Zion Young at the edge rusher who we talked about, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren and Dylan Thieneman at the safety position. So there are guys out there that undoubtedly help the Chicago Bears. The question just becomes about, what do the Bears decide to address first? And that's going to be debated amongst us as fans literally from now until the position's actually drafted, right? But I just want to, and I keep saying to set that expectation for my Bears fans that think the Bears absolutely have to go defensive line in round one. I just want you guys to be prepared that might be there, right? There was a major retooling on this defense, and it came at a time where it's needed. Right now, if we're going to take Ben Johnson's words at face value of what he said about Al Harris and how Al Harris coaches those guys to get takeaways, that should be a thing that may be there regardless, right? But when you look at the three biggest needs for the Chicago Bears in this draft, defensive line, both the tackle and the edge positions, safety are definitely up there, and then maybe linebackers. You have Devin Bush here. May want to find we got TJ Edwards. I can't wait to see those guys there. You got DeMarco Jackson, but you may want to start, especially, with TJ Edwards being more of a veteran, you may want to start looking at some young guys to grow and develop there as well. We'll see what happens with Noah Sewell. He's also kind of a wild card in this because if he can get back to how he performed more so the first 4 weeks of the season and maintain that through an entirety of a season, you may have something there. You may have to make that decision on Noah Sewell as well in the long term, a part of it as well. So, we'll see what happens with that one. But Matt Forte wasn't done talking about that. When he talked about the expectations for what the expectations should be for the Bears in 2026, he said this: winning one playoff game was cool, but winning the second one would have been even better. But then also going to the Super Bowl and getting the win. So Matt Forte, is basically saying, hey, listen, it's cool. You got a playoff win. And I not to say that it adds any validity for me. It doesn't do that. But one of the things that I said, that another thing that triggered some Bears fans, was when I said, hey, listen, we did some things, but we didn't really accomplish shit, right? And that's not to say that we weren't successful. What did we really accomplish out of it? We set a groundwork and a blueprint. Now, let's take it a step further. And Matt Forte is saying that, right? So of course we lost a lot of starters on the defensive side of the ball. We lost DJ Moore, of course. I guess we lost Drew Dahlman as well, of course, because his retirement. But now you're looking for players to step up. And you're looking for Colston Loveland, Luther Burden, Kyle Monangai, those guys to take it a step further. On yesterday's episode, we talked about Ryan Poles and him saying that he would expect or is looking for a bounce back season for Shamar Turner, or a breakout season for Shamar Turner. So there's guys that this team is clearly believing in, and that's good. But one of the biggest beliefs as well is in Ben Johnson himself and his coaching staff. We actually have a coaching staff that has now earned the right for us to believe in them. Let's continue to do that. And whatever the Bears decide to draft, one or not, is that, with the defensive identity resetting for the Chicago Bears, the focus on speed, athleticism, violence, all those type of things, building the defense up from the core and pairing a talent that better fits Dennis Allen's scheme outside of just takeaways. Listen, you draft well in this one. If you have another draft where you get legitimately 3 or 4 starters out of this draft, and then listen, out of the guys that we had last year, you still got guys. I talk about Shamar Turner, Ruben Hippolyte, Zay Frazier, that are looking also to prove themselves that they are legitimate players in this league. All that stuff is there. The expectations for the Chicago Bears has changed, and that's just the reality of it. We went from rebuilding to competing to now we're trying to go to contending this year. And that's the expectation, that Matt Forte is basically laying out here, is to go further than last year. And that's a broad, goal to have, but I think it's real. You got to have that when it comes down to that. The Bears are building steadily, and thus by building steadily, you are building something that you hope is going to be more sustainable. And that's the part that we need to get to as a franchise, is that sustainable thing. This year, the Chicago Bears turned heads last year. This season is about proving who we are and that we are really like that it wasn't a flash in the pan, that it wasn't, just something that happened by happenstance. We got to prove that, and I think we can do that this season. We just got to continue to excel, continue to grow and develop. As long as the Bears do that, we're going to be in a pretty damn good spot. But that's going to end it for today's episode, y'all. I appreciate you guys so much. You guys, I can't tell you enough. This show would not grow if it wasn't for you guys and everything that you bring. So I want to hear from you guys and how you feel on this one. Is Ben Johnson already a top 10 coach in your mind? What position do you think the Bears should target in round one? I know I keep asking that, but it keeps being a fun conversation to watch you guys argue about. I'm not going to lie. And it's hard to ask that right now when we have so much that we still need to fill in the draft, but how far do you think the Chicago Bears are going to go next season? Make sure you drop your takes all down in the comments. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. You can follow us at Shy Bears Central on every social media platform. You can also send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, ChicagoBearsCentral@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, but bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.